I just have this little model here that I just kind of tossed up. This is from a prior student in a prior semester or quarter. And you can essentially see, what is making it up. So we do have some pieces here that, are not actually welded in. They're just small little shapes. You can see it is made up of, now it's not really finished there in the ears. I can notice that one. So let me take this here. Let's try doing a different one. I just noticed that wasn't quite finished. Gabriel. And you can see just some of the variety here. Now, the triangulation, it could be just a modifier to give it that triangulation, but don't be those triangles. That's just a process of converting to triangles that probably happens sometime while she was modeling it. But if you take all that away, you can see, in fact, that, yeah, there is some rough geometry going on here in these. But essentially, you can see what makes it up, right? We've got the earpiece. We've got the arm piece here. We've got the headband itself. We've got some extruded little shapes here to create these wires. So we'll learn about extruding a shape. So wires, like maybe think about when you made the lamp. If you actually just made a curve that represents the cord, you can actually make a profile and extrude that profile all the way down that curve to get that geometry, which is pretty neat stuff. Let me go ahead and just here go file new scene. Don't save, just get back to 0, right? Now remember our basic premise of working always. That's what I forgot to do last week. File, project window, new, given a name. Well, this is the headphone assignment, right? Location. This is going to go to the headphone folder I've created. Select and accept. Now that I've done that, now I know I can literally go to my downloads, find my reference, cut it, find my project folder I just created, and drop it into the source images. Pretty easy to do, right? So now it's ready and loaded up. Now, what file have we created already that would be very easy to just toss up this headphone reference image?
The flat plane.
The panoramic chair. Remember, we made a default viewport setup. So I could actually just go and open that. Now I've got to find it because it's in its own separate folder. See? Modeling reference file, scene, default model reference scene, open. Remember that? This is where we got our basic setup. I don't have to live with it here because I can go ahead and save scene as into the now headphone folder, scene file. And I don't have to call it default model scene anymore, right? I can call it headphones. I don't know, let's call it headphones 01 or headphones A or something like that to get that up and running. Now, the headphones that we're going to use, because right now, like I said, I'm just working with my reference, getting my reference loaded up now, because we're going to have to do some adjustment to that reference, make sure it's centered up properly with the symmetry, that it's casing the right window. But we're probably going to go here and go with the front view, right? So in the front view now, right, all I need to do is swap out the front, remember that? Front reference color option, file, and find the proper folder in the headphone folder now that I just did, under source images. Okay, and now my headphone is on the front. If I wanted to, I could select the side and delete the side because I don't really need that shader anymore, right? I could eliminate that quite easily. And now you can even see where, yes, I don't really need my side reference anymore. I can see with my little cone in a way of what the forward facing is going to be. So I don't really even need that. Okay, and I can go ahead and just lock the headphones as an R, which represents reference, so I don't accidentally move my headphones. And this is where you can almost see here, actually, before I put it in R, that I can look at this reference plane here and see that it is just a little bit off center. I'm just going to nudge it just a little bit to make it be true center, right? You can see now that the center axis there and this axis here. And you can see I just had to nudge it a tiny little bit. When we make subtle changes like that, though, we want to, remember, zero out any kind of translation. That is using the freeze transformation, which is in the modify freeze transformations. And that's always just a smart thing to do with stuff like that with our references, because you see now it has zeroed out and kind of treated it like a brand new coordinate system, translation system. And this is going to be very important, because what we're actually going to do to build this earpiece here is rotate our reference. Before I go off and do that, okay, and just kind of go crazy with this, just stick with me here. Let me go ahead and reference it again. And I'm going to hide the visibility and go back to my perspective. Okay, because I want to talk about surfaces and NURBs just a little bit. Remember when we did the create section? This is when we went to create polys for primitive man, and we've got the create polygon primitives, right? But if you actually look above it, there's actually create NURBs primitives. Now, Maya, which used to be called Alias Wavefront, that was the company that made it, put out the software. It was Alias software, and then it was Wavefront software. And then they combined forces and they created Maya. And then a couple years later, Autodesk bought it and brought it in. But Alias and Wavefront were not polygon modeling tools. They were NURBs modeling tools. This was the early days of 3D modeling. And because they were doing more realistic, not game stuff, not architecture really, but doing more realistic characters and human-like for movies, going all the way back to like Hollow Man and some of these early 3D kind of characters in movies. NURBs gave you more realism. It gave you more realistic topography, because, well, you guys may have done this with, Kitsuro's class. Did you ever see the topography of the hand, where they draw the lines and you can see the curves of the topography of the face? It's a topography drawing. That if you have those curves, you can literally create a NURBs cage of curves, not polygons, that are really organic and shaped and literally skin it. And so you can get a much more realistic, not to mention even just being able to trace. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a little arm that basically you can do ... and follow the topography, and it'll rebuild the surface in the computer. And then you just put a skin around it and you get geometry. But if you look here under these NURBs primitives, what you got, we know most of these already, but what's the main difference? Now we know what a cube is, right? A polygon cube. But look here, if I choose NURBs cube. Okay, what makes up a NURBs cube? Well, it looks like a normal polygon cube, right? However, you'll notice it's not welded together. Okay? So what a NURBs cube is what this is. That's a NURB plane that is made up of a 4-point, 4-vertice curve that has been welded together and then skinned. So that's not actually a polygon. That's just a surface on there. And that's what makes up NURBs. See, it's just basically curve information. Now, in addition to just understanding that, again, let me just get rid of that cube. What about a NURBs sphere? Because we've seen what a polygon sphere is. Well, look at the NURBs sphere, right? Let me go ahead and put a polygon sphere right next to it, just so we can see. Okay, and you can see this. Okay, polygon sphere on the left, NURB sphere here on the right, and you can immediately see what is the lighter geometry. This is very similar to when describing NURBs. It's like describing Adobe Illustrator, right? Raster graphics, Photoshop, digital painting, all that, photographs are made of pixels. Thus, they are actually heavier because it's made up of that array of all those pixels to make up a picture. Whereas Illustrator is extremely lightweight because all I need is 2 points, the curve information, and I get a circle of a shape, which is extremely lightweight. Well, NURBs are very much the same way. It is a series of curves that has been skinned around, as opposed to a sphere of polygons, which is heavier already. So this is why NURBs or NURBs-based geometry, sometimes people will call it sub-D modeling as well, which kind of like 50-50, where you're using the NURBs to control the shape, but the inside is a polygon. But already you can see that the makeup here, see, where I can even come here, it's not gonna let me, to look at what makes that sphere up, that it is actually see, it is a series of curves. Let's try there. See that? That are in an array going around, and it pulls the skin essentially around it, but it actually isn't welded together. It is open. Whereas this, yeah, I could probably do, can I do a 180 there? Nope, it's a sphere. If I want a 180, what do I got to do? I can take away half the faces, right? To get that. So NURBs are some very, very interesting bits of geometry that it's kind of one of those things. If you understand Illustrator better than Photoshop, you'll understand NURBs better than Polygons. That's kind of a way to understand, kind of describe it loosely here. So even here, when you get into basic curves like a circle, which is in the NURB section here, right? And if I were to duplicate that to where now I have 2, again, if I go to CVs, you see it does give me CVs. See, so I can shape it just like a normal curve would. But if I needed to then connect these guys, those are not in the polygon tools. So we're not doing edge-to-edge bridge, right? Like we would have done if we wanted to do this as polygons. What we have to do is we have to rely upon, see, there's curves information. This is all for NURBs. And surfaces are for NURBs. So if I have 2 curves and I want to join them, it wouldn't be a bridge of polygons. It would be a loft, see that, of the 2 curves. And you see it did it as a cubic. So it actually says here in my loft that it is linear. Linear, remember, is between each division is 1. So a linear is a click point sharp corner, as opposed to when I click, like a Bezier curve, it's giving me a curve in and a curve out amount. That is called cubic. And you see, it actually even gives me that option here. They have a cubic. But didn't update, so just or I could hit what 3 on the keyboard to see the temporary cubic effect here. But this is why we get much more, kind of organic shape to this all, because you see, after I've lofted it, come in here and do some really neat, incredible shapes because of the history on this curve. You can see already, kind of like a tree trunk or a piece section of an arm, where you have that topography following around to create, the transition of an arm into a forearm and so on, or an upper thigh. You see that already, and that's what you're modeling with NURBs. You're looking at modeling it as the smooth, curvy shape, but yet it's still extremely lightweight. So we're not having to take polygon, 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 you know, and adding polys to create a sharp corner or whatever. We're worried about more round and an organic kind of element here. Now, similarly, underneath these surfaces, that was just a loft. Now, a loft is one curve to another curve, which is no different than kind of like what I showed you when I was starting to describe it, working with the lamp. That I can see. That is, see how that when I clicked, it didn't give me straight corners. That's cubic. Okay. As opposed to if I were to go create curve CV option box and tell this to be linear, right? Then if I did something like that, you see it's giving me linear, sharp corners. Kind of like, again, the pen tool click, 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 as opposed to the pen tool click, drag, click, drag, click, drag in Illustrator. Make sure I got that back to the default. Just go here. Reset the So just drawing one curve and then duplicating and doing it again. And let's just say this one, I'm going to do some rotate or do some changes to this just to deform my curve. Right? They much more different. And then if I took this original one, duplicate it and move it up. So even think about building like topography, like a waterfall or a rock wall or something like that. That selecting these guys in the correct order. You can hold shift or you can select them all at once, or you can see here, curve 2. Oh, that's a mistake. Best way would go to 1, 2, 3. Here again, the surfaces, I can loft it. Okay. And you can even see here this option in the loft of sections and spans, meaning between each. So I had a vertice here that lofted to that vertice there, which lofted to that vertice where at a value of 1 between each vertex. But I could come over here and even tell that to be O. Of course, I can pop up. What if I wanted 2 per section? Now it'd split that, which is kind of what smoothing does, right? What if I had a 3? It's not 3 there, 3 here. Oh, that was. And every time I do that, it's giving me smoother and smoother and smoother geometry there. That again is not only, you know, I can still be editable because of the history that is attached to it here. So you see how you get much more smooth organic shape. Now, typically when you're done with that, you would select your geometry you've developed, edit, delete by type history. This will allow you then to move, right? I can remove the curves, and then I can just simply use the vertices here to model and sculpt and do whatever I need to do. See that? Also under surfaces after loft, you also see that there's planar. That can be done something as simple as, let me just go to NURBs circle, I did before. Okay. Just making some usual shape to this. Right, so we already saw where if I did something like this to this, I could do a loft. But even then, I could also select the curve. This is kind of neat. Watch this, surface, planar. curve is not planar. That's interesting. Oh, it's not planar because I distorted it. See that? It's not planar. And do it. There. So if I did this, duplicated surface, loft. Now, we already know what happened there. What's wrong with that loft? I did it out of order, which means that surface would need to be reversed. So now it's positive is facing out. But then these can be planar. I don't know if you can see that, but looks like it probably needs to be reversed as well. See that? I want to do that for me. But you can see how I could take these and planar them, and it actually gives me caps. 3. See how I'm able to do that? That planar. Keep outside. Even planar, it cut the inside out of it. Isn't that neat? So again, a nice way to think about working with these NURBs or surfaces or curves, it's like Adobe Illustrator as a modeling tool in its technique. We already saw what the revolve can do, right? We also have the extrude. So again, if I want to get to a point where I want to make, maybe from the side here, I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then it comes up here and then it goes onto the table. I'm thinking about a cord for a lamp, right? And the cord kind of comes down here to the floor and then just maybe does some zigzag kind of effect, right? Until it comes up and plugs into the wall. Right? Too fast. So I have that shape. I can come over here and say, yeah, I need a NURBS circle, which is going to be rotated 90 to represent what the shape of the chord is. Say to yourself, oh yeah, well, what if you want to make it more interesting here? Yeah, I can. I can basically say, yeah, this is one of those two-sided chords here. You know what I'm talking about? They have the two electrical lines going down through it. And then I can simply say this needs to go along that path, surface. This is going to be an extrude. See that? There's just some that need to be updated about that as far as what kind of extrude. And I'm just going to hit Control A to get this so I can say, is it a distance? Is it flat? Is it a tube? Use component pivot from the closest endpoint of the pass, component pivot, or center of boundary box. Use profile normal, use fixed path. Ah, see, that snapped it into place. He has taken that shape and extruded it all the way down that path. The only problem, of course, is that, yes, once again, it needs to be reversed so that the positive is out. Maybe I need to delete my type history here. Because the cool part is, too, even without deleting history, what if I wanted to animate that some way, right? I want a character to be picking it up and dragging it. You can see I can animate by moving the actual vertices that make it up. Okay? edit delete by type history to get rid of that ability. That will allow me to get rid of what I used to make it. And now it should reverse. Oh, not reversing because it's not polygons. It is literally NURBs. So I would have to come here and do a reverse under the surface. Do that. Reverse direction. There we go. See? And it's behaving as NURB. It's not polygons at this point. Now, line lamp table. Just get rid of it. Is that these two, if I want to do an extrude, we need to go into option box. This was why we had to do the table. Remember that? Because we didn't want to live with NURBs. We wanted polys. And that's fine. We can still build with polys. But you have to understand the NURBs process before you can understand the options here, which we've seen. We saw this already, right? Default is NURBs, right? Complete curve range. Output geometry by default is NURBs. We just changed to polygons. Come down here. Remember the few steps there? It should be quads, general, okay? Span, 1, 1, which is the last option and the last option. That means that the polygon it will build will be the lightest possible version of that polygon, which it will not be as smooth and curvy, let's say, as the NURB, because the NURBs are built by curves. We're now going to make polys. Now, you could add a 2 and a 2 here if you want. That just simply means you're going to have more. So watch what happens if I extrude. Actually, I'll hit apply. Of course, now we need to get over here and change this to be fixed path. Tube. You see, we can even add rotation here. I may have done it in reverse order. Hold on, this also matters. Yeah, I did it wrong way. This, let's see, shift path. Yeah. Let's try the other way. There we go. See? And you can see just how much lighter weight the polygon. Now the mesh display reverse will work because it is a polygon, not a NURB. But you see, it's not as smooth and round and curvy as the NURB is, unless I put a 3 to it. And now you can see, yeah, it does have that. So this might be one question sometimes of going in here and saying, yeah, well, maybe if I tell it to be a 2 and a 2, it'll give me a smoother kind of effect. So when we're dealing curves, when we're building with NURBs, when we're doing revolve, loft, extrude, and, any of those surface elements there, you want to go in the option box so you can tell it to output as polygons, or else it's going to be a NURB. And we're not going to, NURBs require a whole nother way of texturing. Like I say, they're not physically welded together. They're actually what's called magnetically stitched. So you're just telling these vertices to hold on to each other. But if you animate, they have the potential of pulling apart and coming undone. But you can do a conversion of that to get that to work. What else is there in the surfaces, right? We got boundary and square. We have bevel and bevel plus, just to kind of show you again what I'm talking about. I go create a NURBs cube, right? And I come to surface here and I go to bevel. It's going to give me a big arrow. And that's because bevel on the NURB side doesn't apply to geometry. It applies to curves. Let me show you again. Create curve tool, CV curve tool. And I'm going to get it almost like Adobe Illustrator, get it right on itself. So it's almost closed. See, but it's not closed. It's open here. Then I'd have to come to, right? Okay. I'd have to come to an open close option box in the curves and say, hey, preserve the shape. Or even better, blend. And you see now it has closed the curve. Now, if I come here to my surface and say, hey, bevel, but it's done. Okay. Go ahead and do a, where'd that go? Reverse direction. There. So you see what that has done now is that has literally created a beveled edge where I can come in now, find the bevel, tell it what width I want it to be, depth, extrude depth, tolerance, right? Corner, linear, circular, bevel shape, straight cut, curve out, all that stuff. See that? And that's much how cool this is. Edit, delete by type in history. Isoparm is what they call these curves. So again, I'm not working with edges and polygons. I'm working with curve-based geometry. So you see, I'm able to right-click in sub-object mode, but rather than choosing vertice, I chose the isoparm, which is what these curves that are making up this geometry, and I select this, and I can actually duplicate that curve. Duplicate the surface curve. You see what that is now, see? That is duplicating that surface curve that's there, which means I can come here now and do a planar. First direction. And put that right back down. So you can see how you can create, go ahead and turn off my edges here. Okay, I can even come into this planar here. Increase my tolerance to make it heavier or less. But you can see how NURBs would work. That I'm already modeling heavy geometry, right? That's much cleaner and smoother than any polygon. And that's just a cap. That is that curve that is a planar. And if this was not going to animate or rig, it was just going to be a modeled surface that just needs to look pretty. All I need to do is combine it, right? Or group it. It's okay that it's not connected here, right? Doesn't matter that that's a separate piece. It's lining right up onto it. See my point? So as long as it doesn't need to be a solid, this is where, again, NURBs is not a video game geometry. Your character has to be, properly sealed up and no openings, no holes, because you're going to either rig it or it can't be have the openings, or else if you've ever ended up halfway inside of a wall inside of a video game, it's literally because there was a seam and opening that you got stuck in, and you're running into that positive and negative side of the normal, and you're kind of stuck because it's some kind of blocking volume that's attached to your character. But if I need to model like a vehicle or something that is just needing to be referenced as a model, there's nothing wrong with the fact that these are separate pieces, because it's still representing that geometry. Now, also remember that at any time I could take geometry like this in the surface and do a rebuild, which is right here, option box, and say, yeah, you know what? I want to rebuild all this, but I want to rebuild it as polygons. Quads, general, span, I'll go with span of 1 rather than span of 2. Span of 1, rebuild. Well, that didn't exactly work well. Too simple. But now you can see that this smooth geometry of a NURB, when I did exactly 1-to-1, that's the polygon it gave me. So that would require, of course, to do some more fancier kind of rebuild here. So instead of 1-to-1 spans, maybe I'll do, let's see here. Let's try a 4 and a 4. Just trying to get a little bit more detail here. Okay. Not quite there, but you can also see where I need more or I need less. Like I don't need whatever direction this one is. Let's try 8 and 1. Yep, now I know it's actually backwards. I need to go 8 in the V, 1 in the U. Okay, and I can start to kind of get a polygon version of what I've done there. See that? And then I can do the same thing with this on top. Go maybe like the 3x3. See? And now I got a polygon version of the top. And then I could weld those together if I need to do and work in polygons. So NURBs can give you some really incredible results. You can then animate on them. Bevel Plus is a cool thing there, which I'll get to. I think it's next week when we're talking about Adobe Illustrator and using the text tool to create geometry. So again, if I have the curve from a live image trace of a logo out of Adobe Illustrator, I can bring it in here and literally hit a button and it will tell me, I'll tell it how thick I want it to be, what kind of bevel do I want it to have, how much detail or what polygons I want that to be, and I can create a 3D version of a logo from the Illustrator file or even just text using these surface tools. And there's a lot of other ones here, you know, NURBS patch, move scene, open scene. This is kind of a crazy one here. I'll do that. Let me use a NURBS primitive here. Like if I had a NURBS sphere. Right, and then I come over here and I create a curve. And I'm going to take that curve there, and I'm going to do open close with a blend. Okay. Modify center pivot this. But what's neat about this now is I can literally take this and project the curve on the surface. I projected that curve on the surface, and then I can basically say trim tool. I think it's keep. I want to keep that. There you go. See? I can literally cut things out. And that's why I use examples like if you're modeling a character and you have some fancy armhole here, you can take the curve from the end of your arm, aim it towards the body, project it, and then cut it, and then bring it over and skin it and start stitch together. Or think of a branch coming out of a tree, right? You've got the branch and it's got some crazy curve. You take that curve, line it up on the trunk, project it, and then you can remove it and then bring that right in. So I can come in here. Okay, let's go ahead and actually, before I do that, I'm going to take it because the history is still there. And I'm just going to make it a little larger. Now I can come in, delete by type history. You can see just how do something like this. And even here, isoform. Give me the isoform. Trim edge, surface edge. Go. Curve, duplicate curves on surface. Edit, delete by type history. Now be aware that these need to be welded. Okay, see, curve, attach. Is that attach or is that what is that? Click that is or not. Attach. Not. There we go. Just attach that curve, and then I can come here and just, like I say, I'm gonna do a branch. Surface, loft, oops, I'm still in polygon mode for that loft. Let's just do that. You can see in a way how see that? How I would model that branch, for example, to fit that space using curves, using NURBs, using surfaces. And then I could go in and convert these to polygons and weld them together and get some really neat kind of dynamic modeling geometry here. I actually just like it because it holds that memory until you are deleting, until you delete the history of it all. There we go. So powerful stuff, these NURBs, as far as what you can do with them. All right. Let's get back to our reference now. All right, so when we're looking at this, go ahead and hide my grid a second. And we start to look at the geometry here. What shapes do we see? What shapes can we figure out pretty easily?
The earmuffs has like, it's like a short cylinder.
Yep. Yeah. Even though we're looking at it from this way, we know this is an over the ear or on the ear kind of headphone, right? A little pad, which should be fairly circular. And it's got a defined, like kind of like a hard shell on the back, and then this padding. And if you've ever seen these, you know it kind of goes into the ear. There's a small little opening. So let's start with thinking about breaking down the geometry of the ear pad itself. Now, one of the problems, though, is this is on an angle. So this is also another reason why we unR it, unreference image this. I'm actually going to rotate this till it's approximately straight up and down using my grid. Does not have to be perfect. And now we're getting here where, in order to model this little headphone piece, this little earpiece, it's almost best to rotate the reference plane. Now, when I rotate that reference plane, you can see it's 38.98, blah, blah, blah. I might as well give that a round number, right? Because it's pretty much 39. because I'm going to need to rotate that back into place when I'm done here. Make sense? But now I can R or reference my layer, so I can start to model in the layer here. Headband. So all I've done is just kind of tossed in there and got it vertical up and down. Now, this is where we might want to utilize the X-ray, right? Remember that? That's in shading, X-ray. This is because we want to be able to see the curve that we're going to make. Now, if I look at this, okay, I kind of know based on this angle here that it does go in, and there's probably a little mesh speaker thing that goes up against your eardrum, right? Right here, like back in here somewhere. So think it almost is like a donut. It kind of comes around like this, then that, right? So again, it comes out, down, around here, bit of a sharp corner, and then to about there. So I'm going to use now a curve tool to do that. Watch this. Create curve tool, CV curve tool, option box. Now, if I model it heavily, and where every click I make is going to be just one edge, right? I would go with linear to get the lightest weight possible. If I want more detail to come through in that curve, for example, I know that this has a specific shape that goes in here and that gets kind of cornered right here to go relatively straight. I want to make sure I put in those extra clicks. So watch what I'm going to do here to do this. And yes, it might end up being needing reversed, but we know how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to start in here, see, because it kind of comes out like this, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Remember, corners get 2 clicks or more. 3, 4, 5. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wherever I needed more detail, I put in an extra click, right? So these little creases, you can see they're just bang, you know, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here I need a sharp corner. Here I need a sharp corner. I need detail, detail. And here I've made it only 2, so I can get that straight. So when I hit enter, I should be able to see a cubic curve that roughly is the profile of that earpiece. And again, I can always change this after the fact. Remember, even after I've evolved this, it still gives me the ability of changing this curve to create and change the resulting polygon shape that we make, surface. CD curve. Now, if I need to here, okay, if you need to make changes to this, we know we can do that by what? Right-clicking and choosing vertex. But let me show you a shortcut now. Just hit F8, and it allows me now to come in here and say, yeah, you know what? This kind of needs to be a little bit further up there and maybe a little further in. Maybe this needs to be, see, so I can literally start to look at tracing this. And remember, we can also use our up-down arrows to chug along that curve to choose the next vertex or the prior vertex. See, I can almost look here and say, you know what, this almost needs to be a little closer to that edge. And then I can hit F8 to get out of subobject mode to go back to the green. Now, what was a major issue we had with using the revolve on the lamp and the table was if the axis wasn't in the right location, when it revolved, it sent it way off, or you had to choose X, Y, or Z, right? The revolve axis for this needs to go around this way, right? which means roughly I need my control here, my axes to be right about here or in between roughly, but on that last click, which represents the center of that earpiece. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit insert on my keyboard, and I'm going to move this. By the way, I am in front view only. I am not in perspective at this time. Okay, and I'm just going to move that till that it is on that line, right? Kind of like we had to do with the mirroring node for the couch. We had to move it so it was on the edge because I'm going to revolve on the, I guess that's the X, right? The red is the X. I'm going to revolve on X, but I want it to revolve around that point. I hit insert on the keyboard and I simply moved it over here so that it was aligned with that central point there. On the keyboard, that's the move tool.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah, and then you hit
Sure.
insert to move it over into halfway. See that? Now you can move it over so that it's on that center. Now, with that where your first or your last click was right there, yeah. See, because we're going to revolve around that, yeah, that red axis. Mine's yellow.
How do you get it back to being the green line and not polygons?
F8 is the shortcut key to go sub-object, object. So if you want to grab vertices, just hit F8. You got vertices. You want to get back, you hit F8 again. A really nice, quick, easy way to go sub-object mode. Even in polygons. I mean, well, we're dealing with a curve. It doesn't have edges.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have faces. It only is vertices. So when you hit F8, it knows you want to go to vertices. Polygons would be a little bit different. I think if you go F8 with polygons, it goes to whatever your last option, your last choice was. All right. Surface. What are we going to do with this to get the round earpiece? We're going to revolve option box. Surface, revolve option box. Now, look at the top here. What's it give us some options already? Now, I can always just hit apply and make changes later, but let's understand our option boxes while we got them. What axes do I want to revolve around? X, which is, again, it's yellow mine, but it's red. So we want axes of X. We want 360 degrees around. Yes, sure. Segmentation says, mine says 12. What does that mean? It's going to give me 12 segments around, which means I can get a little squarish if I want to. I don't want to go 4. That would be a true square, right? I can do 6, but I'm going to go with 12. I can probably go with 8. Remember, this guy, that's essentially primitive man, right? And we basically said you put a piece of geometry there like a sphere, and how many edges do we want going around? Okay, for segments. We want to make sure we're going with polygons. Okay, see, there's the default that says triangles. Now we know what that one student did wrong. She didn't go quads. Which now a triangle is simply 2 triangles make a quad. It's just that certain video games, certain modeling require tris. Tris are just quad cut in half. That's it. Okay. I'm also going to jump over to general. But if I wanted to, I could do a count. Imagine if you're having to model something and it has to be, under 2,000 polygons. I can then control the poly count I'm doing by limiting. Okay. So I went quads, general, span 1, span 1. Let's see how this comes out, okay? Just watch this. I'm gonna hit apply. That doesn't look that bad considering you see it's as simple and lightweight as I could do it. But before I test anything out, we hit 3 on the keyboard to see what it looks like smoothed. And shading, turn off my X-ray so I can see it. So you see, I only added geometry by going 1 and 1, span and span, based upon the clicks I made. It didn't add more.
Because I have more lines kind of this way.
Going vertically like that?
Yeah.
Well, those are based upon the clicks you made. Yeah.
I'm at a pension.
Well, we can always take away after the fact by simply double clicking the edge loop and remove it. Okay. Just like if we needed more after we get this modeled out, we can add more if we want to by simply beveling, right? I'm showing you though, instead of starting with a cylinder, why start with a cylinder and add geometry to get the shape you want? We can start with the shape we want. Okay, now that's not bad. Now I can see when I hit 3 on the keyboard that I need to have a little bit more exaggerated. So I can actually close that for a second. Okay. Because the curve I drew, which is right here, let me go ahead and just, I need my reference there.
How come it looks like it's only like shrunken on one side? Because when I have mine like without the smoothing, even though I
line
traced the line, it doesn't go to the other top of it.
It's perspective and take a look with an F. Okay.
Because yours touches both sides, but mine doesn't.
Oh, you mean you touch the bottom here, but not the top here?
Yeah.
That is literally because of the, where your anchor point was relative to that last, but that's not a big deal. Watch this.
With my headphones.
All right, because, for example, if you need to expand it higher, you can simply take this vertex or hit, and move it up. Okay, or hit, in the option for your revolve, right? That you can literally change some of these factors for X or Y to move it, further. It'd probably be Y. Yeah, moving the pivot Y will expand it. Let me show you what I'm talking about here, okay?
My headphone just looks like it's like this big. Like it-
Look what I can do here. If I highlight the pivot X, see, pivot Y, see what I can do with pivot Y? I can stretch it on up to make it fit better. That's just highlighting the pivot Y of the revolve node of this. Not to mention if I hit 3 on the keyboard, see, you can already see where I'm like, yeah, this is a little bit off here. But look what I can do with my original curve. Hit F8. Say, yeah, you know what? These need to come a little more out there. These guys here need to come a little bit out there. This guy here to come a little bit out there. So I'm making adjustments, tweaks to the curve that I used to build this. I'm tweaking the curve after the fact to get it, especially with the 3, the smooth mode, 3, I'm using that to get it much more accurate. Okay. I mean, a great example would be, look at this guy here. That one right there. You know what? I'm going to push that in further. This guy here, push that in further. See? I can make changes to this after.
Matches it, but
Yeah, to get a much more accurate. So look here now, you can look around and you can see the geometry. I just switched to perspective view. And look at that, now I've got my 3 button on, right? So if I go to 1, you can see the low poly version, what I built. Okay, or if I hit 3, I can see all that smooth kind of geometry to it. Now, when you're done with that, and you like the shape of your little headphone piece here, edit, delete by type history so we can grab the curve we used to create it. See, that's the curve we used to create it there. And now we can get rid of that curve. We don't need it anymore. But you have to delete the type history of what you built to then get rid of the curve that we were using to actually affect it. Because now, right, if I want to, I can come in here and fine tune, because it's a polygon now, right? And exaggerate, for example, these little folds. So I'm just double clicking my edge loops. Let's assume here, you know what? Yeah, I've got this edge on the front. I'm going to double click it. Now I'm in polygon mode after I delete the history. And I can say, you know what? I really don't need that. I can delete it. Control D. See, I really don't need that face there. Or double click if I absolutely want to here, and I can bevel 1 and turn it into 2, just like we did before. You see this? I think it's pretty amazing that just so quickly we can make a complex geometry like that just by following a curve. Or again, if I wanted, you know, and I didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot to it. Now, let's have more fun with this, because I don't know if you've seen a lot of these headphones, but if I rotate this to the side, it's pretty perfectly round, right? Not really what the shape of these are, right? Usually they have a little bit squareness to them. So watch this neat option here. Okay, so you see I've got it. I go back to 1 here, just look at the simple version. All right. So let's just imagine here for a second. Okay, I've made this perfectly round donut looking head piece here. What if I wanted to make it just a little bit more custom shaped? I don't have a side view of my headphones, but I know a lot of times they're a little more squarer than perfect round, right? Watch what I can do now that I've got this complex shape. And this is, okay, to do this, I'm going to switch over to the animation menu set. I'm going to come over to deform. And I'm going to add in what's called a lattice deformer. There you go. Here it is here. Lattice. Okay. Option box. And I'm going to make a lattice deformer that is 5 by 5 by 5 instead of 2, 5, and 2. Because I'm now going to deform my little earpiece using a lattice, which is kind of like a little cage that's going to go around it. Think of like a mesh deformer when you're in Photoshop or something like that. So I'm just going with a 5 by 5 by 5, creating. See that? And I'm actually going to swap this. I'm in perspective. I don't want to be perspective. I want to be in the side view here. And I'm going to right click and choose lattice point. So that, watch this, I can square this up a little bit. Square that up a little bit. See? I don't know if you could tell what I just did there, but I just deformed it by using the right-click lattice point. And you can see how I am now taking it from a perfectly round headphone piece. See that? More of a square. I deformed it using a lattice. Okay? It's still pretty much where I want it to be. In fact, I'll even maybe do this, which is kind of neat. See that? So the point simply being here is that we can distort and deform after the fact of making it to make it a more organic or a more unusual shaped kind of thing. See that? But to now make it stay here, okay, I'm not selecting the lattice, I'm selecting the earpiece. Edit, delete by type history, and it holds that shape. Okay, I've removed the lattice. I no longer need it. It served its purpose for me to deform. And then last but not least, take ourselves a 15 here is, okay, I'm going to unlock my reference. Select both these guys. Now, I already know I rotated my reference 39 degrees. Okay. So essentially, what I'm going to do, this is really weird. I'm going to take my earpiece, hold shift, select my plane, and hit P on the keyboard for parent. So that all I need to do is just hit 0 on my rotate Z, and then select my earpiece and say unparent, which is shift and P, or unparent.
So you select the earpiece and the background. You parent.
I selected the earpiece, held shift, selected my plane, my reference plane, and I hit P to parent it on the keyboard. So I only had to rotate the background back to 0, or the reference to 0, and it matched up to it. Instead of me having to rotate that 39 degrees and then move it where it needs to be, because it was already aligned up, right? It was already aligned with my reference plane. Now, me personally, I'm looking at that, I'm like, yeah, not quite enough gap. Probably get away, modify, center pivot. I'm going to swap on over here back to my front view so I can start to look at some of the simple geometry that we're dealing with here, right? Now, let's see. What do we want to model next? Well, let's go ahead and play with this little chord here, okay? Now, I already showed you how we can build a chord by using the extrude option, right? Now, again, we're not going to make this fit as a single model. These are going to be component based, so you can actually do like an exploded view or something like that. So I'm just going to go back to my create, curve tool, CV curve tool, and I'm just going to go just inside, right, just inside the your PC here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Something like that. Not have to be 8 clicks, but I'm just kind of showing you. Hit enter so you can see. Now, again, if I want to hit F8, I can do some tweaking here to try to get it to be right down the middle. And actually, like I said, just using my up-down arrows to control which vertice I'm selecting at a time. Okay. So I have this little curve kind of defined there. Nothing fancy about it. But now I need a profile. I need a profile curve. That's the path. Now I need a profile curve that represents that little thing. And that will be in the create NURBs circle. Create NURBs primitive circle. I'm going to move that on over. Okay. You can see I can hit the F to zoom in on it. And I'm just going to rotate that so that it's about aligned to
That's what that means. Oh,
About lined up there to the beginning of the path. You see that? So you can see I've got the circle and the path. So now I should be able to, now there's an order to this. We already learned that there's an order you can select. I don't know off the top of my head even, so I'm gonna select the profile, shift, path, surface, extrude, option box.
it's hard to see when the circle color matches the rotation color.
Yeah. Okay, and now I'm gonna do it two. Now, here though, you can start to see where if I go option box, yeah, I can choose the components that we've already seen. So I could say two. Now, result position, do I want it at profile or at path? I don't know yet, right? I do want a polygon. I do want quads, general, span, 1, 1, so all that's still the same. Let's hit that. And now
Uh-oh.
I should be able to back out.
So it will then do the form.
Now, keyboard, it gives me a little smoother option. But once it's selected now, I can go into the node. So remember, I can go into the option box and choose the things, or I can make changes after the fact. So again, extrude type is 2. Use component pivot. Endpoint, no. Component pivot, no. Center the butt, no. So that really doesn't matter, right? Fixed path. Okay, so it's not really giving me the exact 2 path. Now let me hit perspective to see, does it look correctly in the perspective? Or do I have to really make some changes to that? Okay, here I am, and it looks pretty good. It's just not aligning itself really well to the path that I made. But that's okay, because I can hit F8 and I can force it and exaggerate it here to fit a little bit better. Or get a little better example of what I'm trying to do here. There we go.
My little tube doesn't in a tube.
Do we switch it to Polygon or kept it at NURBs?
Okay, so all I did was hit 4 so I could go into the wireframe mode. So I can get this to be a little bit more accurate. Where it needs to be now. Okay, so I just nudged it a little bit. Now again, remember, I could literally, once I get it somewhat like I want it to be, literally delete by type and history it, get rid of the little curve and the little path I used to create it. Literally just go to vertex here and do it exactly where I need it to be. See? But then you see here, right? There's this little nub, right? This little slightly wider nub right there. Well, watch what I'm going to do to actually get that one to work. This is kind of cool. Okay. Watch this. I'm going to highlight, oops, the face. See, right here at the end. See that? Maybe I'll go into perspective so you can see it a little easier. See that? I've just highlighted the face of that end piece. See that? Highlighted the end of the face piece there. Let me hide my There, you can see it. See, I highlighted the end piece. It goes into the headphone, the earpiece. But watch the shortcut I have to make it be a little bit wider here. See that? Watch this. Yeah, I've got it selected. Edit mesh, extrude. Okay, so you see I just extruded it to widen it. But again, what if I want there to be a sharp corner there? I'm going to double click that edge and do a bevel. Okay. I've created just a little sharper edge there. And even there, that also could be a quick little bevel. So when I hit 3, you see I end up getting corner. Let me show you a couple different ways to kind of go about problem solving this, right? Go ahead and lock in my reference. Now I know this is my center axis, right? Right here. So let's think about a couple weird ways to kind of go about and model this. So just watch, because I'm going to show you old school polygon modeling. I'm going to show you again some wireframe modeling. Remember, we're recording this because we may not actually get this done today. But I want to focus on just doing some simple stuff here. So watch this. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a simple polygon plane. Move it up to there. Rotate it so that it is 90 degrees. Right? Scale it up so it fits in a way this little patch you can say I've got. But then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make it be maybe a 2 by 2.
Two subdivision?
Actually, I changed it. I went instead of 1, I went 2 by 3. 2 by 3. So you see, it's just a tiny little polygon just lined up to the top of the head there.
With it, it doesn't look.
In perspective.
Oh, makes sense. I'm like, what is this?
All right. Let's get nuts with this because I'm going to show you a technique of polygon modeling that is actually the foundations of polygon modeling without starting with a primitive cube or something like that. Or like I showed you already, starting with advanced shape and then working your way back from it. What if we just want to make polygons? Okay. What if we just want to work with this and sculpt? So right now, I did make this tiny little polyplane, right? Now, eventually, I will not use that half. So you can get rid of it. The only reason why I did that is so I have my anchor point here. See, my pivot is still dead center. So there is a way of modeling just by making polys. So watch this, okay? So what I'm going to do is grab the edge, 1, 2, and 3. I hold shift to do that. Okay, watch how neat this is. Hold in shift, extrude out, rotate a little bit, and move down. Let me go ahead and turn on, there we go.
That's it.
Now you can see the edges. You see what I did? I just pulled it out, rotated a little bit and moved it down. Let's do another one. Watch this. Now, what I'm doing when I'm doing this as well is I'm looking at the topography on this side as well, because wherever I have indentions, I need an edge. Whenever I have dimples or peaks, I might need an edge. Let's hold shift. Let's get to this next one here. Okay, now that one's going to line up here to this divot. Okay. I'm going to do it again, hold shift. Here, but again, rotate it to get the edge there to kind of line up a little bit better.
Edges.
I'm simply just selecting with shift that edge, holding shift, and I can build, I'm creating a new polygon. Okay? So all I did was just drag to get here, drag to get there. Now you see though, I'm trying to line up my edges with the topography. So by the time I go around, I'll be horizontal. Make sense? So I'm slowly aligning that. Now you see, I stopped here. I stopped here because we've got quite a big divot. That's what? Detail, right? Sharp detail. And wherever I have sharp detail, what do I require? More edges. So watch what I'm going to do here on this headband here to be able to accomplish that. Okay, so I've got my shift, shift, shift edge, holding shift, and just extrude a little guy there. See that? Now I'm going to go shift, and I'm going to get to this one. Little bit of rotate to follow the topography. This could also be a little bit of moving the vertice. Now be wary, I'm in the front view, so I only want to go in an X and Y direction, no Z. I'm going to deform this. Okay? Watch now, because I'm getting into a corner here. See this corner? Shift, drag around to here. Watch what I'm going to do though. Switch to vertex.
Yeah, and then like they're disappearing. Those are shaded gray.
Just go to whatever.
So look at what look what I'm doing here, guys. You see that? It's not complex to see what I'm doing. All I did was start off with the little three-piece poly, grab the edge, shift drag, shift drag, shift drag, shift drag, shift drag, shift drag, and I'm literally modeling a flat shape by simply just pulling and dragging polygons. Pretty cool that you can literally model this way. In fact, I must look at this and I'm just going to say, hey, you.
Or maybe it's. Right, for the subdivision, yes, but. So. Well, actually, just if it didn't need to grab it, if you grab your edge. Just get the rest of it.
Okay, does everybody see what I'm doing?
Absolutely not.
I'm simply shift dragging the edge, and as I'm doing that, I'm extruding along the front face of the headband. Like that. So here we're just going to, you can see eventually shift. Rotate. I don't need to worry so much about the fact that this is round here because when I smooth it, it will round out. Here. Now again, look at the angle of that to make sure that we're rotating it out there and getting that edge to kind of follow. Once again, you see there's a roundness factor there. Remember, if you want to know, just hit 3 on the keyboard and you can start to see, right? Anytime I want to, I could literally hit 3 on the keyboard and be like, yeah, you know what? This kind of needs to be out to there, right? And this, kind of needs to be out to there and go around and see with 3 on the keyboard. Now you can see why I put 2 of them close together at places, see?
Something's wrong with my extrude.
What's wrong with your lines? Here, be right there in a second. I'm just gonna go with this one here. Here. Now this is where we need to do just a lot more geometry modeling, right? Start to say, yeah, this needs to start to go up there. Topography. Just like that. Okay. So how do I get the other side of this arm that I just built? Watch, okay? Now, I could select the edge and extrude it towards the center and then merge or mirror, right? That could be done. It's just 50 different ways to do the same thing, right? I can literally take this guy, edge, double click the whole border edge, shift and drag it over. Do that, and I'm done. And then mirror the other side. I could do that. In fact, it would probably be best for me, now that I think about it, to shift, drag a little tiny bit, right? You see that? What am I doing when I shift and drag a tiny bit like that? I'm making a sharp corner, which this must have. So you see, I just extruded, just like I extruded it down. I did the whole edge loop and just extruded it a teeny bit there to guarantee that I'll have a fairly sharp corner there when it's smooth. Then I can do it again. I'll use my side view here to give it a little bit of thickness. See, 3 on the keyboard and look and see what you got now. See that? So there's a couple of different ways to go about building the thickness here. To do it one more time. So I've got that one strip of the arm, right? I move it over some units. Where's my headphones there? There, let's say that, 4 units. Edge. double click the edge loop. And now all I need to do to guarantee sharp corners is to do hold shift to extrude and just do a little bit. And then do another one that takes me towards the center axis, right? Just like that. Other side, I can mirror it. Mesh, mirror. What is the axis? Z. See? And if I hit 3 on the keyboard, it should give me the smooth version. See that? Nice and smooth and detailed. Now be wary. Eventually, we will not need here over the other side eventually. Now, what about stuff here like, let me go into, again, X-ray mode so I can see through my geometry. Right? Let me hide my reference so you can see what I've selected now. Right? Look here. Look what I've selected now. I've now selected, as I mirrored it, I've selected the parts of the cushion, but not the parts of the cushion. I guess I do need the parts of the cushion there. Okay. Okay. So now I've selected the parts of the cushion for the top of the head here, those faces that go all the way around to that edge there. Even the little tiny slivers here and there I've selected. Because now, just like the comfy couch, I need to extrude the cushions out. So watch, very simply done, right? Mesh, extrude. And I'm going to do that till I hit the part where the cushion kind of starts to separate here. Because now, let me hide my reference. Now I want to deselect the little slivers I've got here. Because I do not want to select those when I extrude once again. And lastly, for our reference here, we have a few of these cushions that have a little bit more of a face to them. They're going to get extruded individually. So these guys, see, I'll just do a, this would be extrude or bevel. I'm doing extrude of up and minimize. G. Up. Minimize. G. Up. Minimize. These guys look like they just. Extruded, turn black. That's curious.
It's splitting down. Like there's one vertex that I see. Well, there's two vertices that are supposed to be connected with one line, but there's like 3 lines coming from them. So instead of just one line connecting the two, it's like 1, 2, 3.
That just means, yeah, that means that you've got an edge in there that doesn't have a home. Yeah, and when you smooth it, it stretches them out and shows you just got double edged.
And so I just take a vertex.
Hopefully you guys, what you're discovering is that the smooth mode is a very, very good way of seeing, do I have any errors? Okay, because when you're looking at one mode, you're like, okay, I have geometry, where I need geometry, happy day, good, yay. But when you hit that 3 key, you really start to realize, oh yeah, I've got some errors here. I've got geometry that doesn't have a home. I have geometry that doesn't serve a purpose. And you can really start to use that to kind of, you know, figure out and problem solve and see what your issues are. When I model, or anybody I know that models, when they model, they go crazy. Then they get the 3 mode and they're able to go back and double check to look for vertices that don't have a home, because that can cause that. Because remember, when you hit 3 key, you're subdividing between each vertex. So if you have a vertex just floating in there, but no edge is connected to it, you know, it's just along an edge, it could very well be splitting there, and that's where you end up getting these weird little loops or these weird little curves that are going nowhere specifically. So.
Doesn't want to select the vertex I'm trying to merge.
We're probably, we may not get time to actually finish this, but I want to just kind of talk, because we are getting close to 4:15 already. So you can see in a way, once I got the one piece done, I can mirror to get the other. I could take my original guy here, combine it with the little extension, the little wire there, and I can merge it to the other side. So you can see we're really starting to get a lot of this part that's fleshed out that we need to get fleshed out done, except for this complex piece and that more simplistic version of those. So this is where as I get this kind of completed. Now again, remember, I can go open a shader, make it different colors, yay, toss it in there, right? But what I want to do here, or want to start thinking about, is making this easy, simple piece and then merging, but then taking the other side, and you see what it basically is. You're cutting and slicing. So think about the couch cushions when it comes to this piece right here, right? So you're basically going to model a piece, take the inside, flip the normals to get the inside positive side of that little clip. But I might really want to build the simplistic one first, very similar to the way I built that. Kind of like the inside piece here, I could probably build by using the inside, that side can be made from that side. So they fit together like a glove. But once we get working here, you can see it's not a whole lot more to kind of think about, because this lower piece, we should much effort, right? Over here. And maybe, like I said, maybe I want to model this piece first. What did I do before to make that piece? Well, that was simply a polygon, polyplane. You rotate and use your round numbers. I say 3 by 3, that's what I did. 3, that doesn't really matter if it's 2 by 3 here. If I say no, it's not 2 by 3, it's 3 by 3, and I'll just scale it that way. Even at this point, if I want to, maybe I want to take that and line it up so it matches up from the side already, or even start working on it. And I can go ahead and, extrude this piece very much the same way.
Like double click the outside. Doesn't matter.
So a weird bulge happened with mine and I had to like go back. I beveled it down to make the cushion part, but one of the pieces looks like it's like overlapping and I'm not. What is it?
All right, so if you look here, guys, in case you're wondering how I'm kind of finishing some of these pieces up, well, look what I just did. I just did the same technique of building that. I built this one over here. Okay, very quickly, done. But watch me as I finish it up. Okay, let me go ahead and finish this up here. Now, this one I just built, because this is the simplistic one, this arm.
Oh, no.
So I just built that. What I need to do, remember our shortcut here of even doing it. Double click the edge, shift to get a sharp corner by just giving myself a little bit of extrude over. Hold shift, take it all the way to the symmetry line. Object mode, mesh, and mirror, right? Now, there are some interesting things going on here as well, though, because that looks all great and fine, right? It looks, I probably could even have edged, right, up here. Taking this whole edge around here and doubling it up. So that I get a sharp corner on this flat end here. Okay. I'll just do that with another quick little bevel, little tiny bevel here, maybe 0.5. Hold that sharp corner, you see how it fits together kind of tightly there. This also tells me that this guy needs to get shoved in there a little bit better. Now, preference though, this looks great and all, and it works for this here, but I still have yet to attach my headphone piece to it. So I'm going to go ahead and temporarily hide this. Display, hide, selected. So I can get in here and look at this geometry. Because right about here, right, I need to have a little block right here. So I can quickly kind of do that just by selecting two of these guys. Again, do an extrude. Let's switch right to the scale. Okay, that lets me kind of make a poly in the middle. Now remember, if we want to hold square shape, we got to double up our vertices or edges. So watch real quickly. I'm going to take this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, mesh, edit mesh rather, vertex, chamfer, which is chamfer vertices. Make them much smaller though. 0.15, we'll say 0.5. Okay. That chamfers that edge to guarantee a sharp corner. So then now I can just do a little extrude. I might actually require myself to display show last hidden, so I can literally see from the view here which way I'm going. Okay. And remember that important thing is though, even though if I hit 3, you see it's rounded on the top there. I don't want that to be rounded. So all I have to do when that's all said and done is just do another small extrude. And that should now hold that square shape. See? Very frankly, that's kind of tiny compared to what my reference was. It should be a little bit larger there. But that's still not that big of a deal because I can quickly do it here with a vertex shift. And now I get that little box holding onto the headphone. See that? Oh, and that reminds me, I didn't quite show you guys this before, but you can get an idea of it here. I didn't do the little inside of the earpiece here. Guess what that is? That is a shift extrude, release, shift extrude again. Click. A right click, how do I do that? Right click to vertices with holding in control, two vertices, and that's a quick little merged center. I can do a select grow and create my little, right? That's that little piece of speaker that's inside the headphones. See that? Oops, I should have done that in the, not in the perspective.
Last words.
Yeah.
Where's the, I can't find the mirror tool. I have everything selected, but it doesn't show the mirror tool. Let's have a look. Yeah,
You're asking where is the mirror?
yeah, because it has a little like button thing to press, right? You don't have to find it in the top area. Because it's not showing up in the top area.
The mirror isn't showing up in the top area?
Yeah. Like it isn't showing under mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools. It isn't showing up under there.
Should be under mesh mirror. But you have to have the geometry you're going to mirror selected. Once you have selected, it'll let you mirror.
Uh-oh. My earmuffs merged together.
Oh, at the middle? Yeah, that just means that your offset needs to be set up a little bit better. Remember too, you could also select them individually, and when you merge, you could say don't, because the muff, you don't want your earmuffs actually, like here, I don't want this piece to merge with the other side. So when I do that mesh mirror, all I have to do is say, do not merge borders, and they won't merge together. See? Let me just make sure I'm doing X, see? Now, again, they're not touching each other, but if they were touching each other, they would be two separate pieces. See, because I can now take this, look at this, face, double click it, and separate it from the other one. See? So now it's two separate pieces.
What would be the best offset? Like,
The best offset, well, when you do mirror, there's an offset button in there. Or if you just get it to mirror correctly, you can then, like I say, right click face, double click, and then do a mesh and separate the one from the other. So you can then move them apart manually. All right. Almost completed with this. The only thing I really have to worry about, like I showed you before, is that this complex kind of doohickey waddle, or whatever you want to call it here, right? This little fact that this has this little, what would you call that, hinge, so it can fold, right? Money doesn't jiggle jiggle, it folds. Okay, so I have this weird little nut, it's almost like a nut and screw with a hinge. Now, I've modeled that on the other side. Whoa, and I can also see now where that could be. Oh, make it live. Hey. Make it live. I'll make it live now. Okay. Yeah, because we're running now. Ooh. So the last thing I really need to deal with here, you can clearly see I have this piece done, which was the simple basic one. I have this little nut and this little hinge here. Well, if I want to be official and actually model it out, let's start with the easy part, which is that little nut. Okay? That little kind of screw hinge, but axes, whatever you want to call that. So look at this. This is going to be kind of neat. Watch how cool this is. Okay? Watch this. Create curve tool, CV curve tool. Right? Now, I know I'm a little bit different than what it is here, so I'm going to guesstimate a little bit. Okay? Watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, kind of like that. Problem is, that's that piece. Now I'm going to come in right here, right next to it. So I'm going to eventually weld these. And that piece right there. Right? Now these are currently on an angle. One of the problems we had, if you recall, with making the ear parts, right? So I model them like that. Now, let's center pivot them so I can move them out of the way. And I'm just going to eyeball these guys up until they're pretty much straight up and down. And yes, I could actually take this and just slide it up so it's pretty darn close to that. I could even take both of these, right? And curve, attach. See, now they're part of one. What do I have here essentially? A revolve. Surface, revolve, option. No, not revolve. Okay. What axes will I be revolving on? It looks like it's X again. Polys, quads, general, span of 1. Whoa, why did it do that? It's because the gizmo, right, of the axes is way off. So that's going to be my pivot Y that I need to change. That looks pretty good right about there. See that? Looks pretty good. Modify, center pivot. Now, I wish I would have remembered exactly what rotation I had there. Because now I'm going to take this. Okay. Now remember, I still have history active here. Okay, so I can still make adjustments as needed. And I'm just going to set that up roughly, kind of like so. Right, I still have history, so I can still come and take these vertices and still make alterations and changes to this. Okay, even after the fact. Right, when I'm done, edit, delete by type, history. So I can get rid of my curve. And now you see I created that little nut and bolt screw thing. Oops, what's the problem? Mesh display reverse. See? Does look just a little bit large, but that's okay. I got my little anchor pivot, whatever you want to call that.
It looks like there's a hole in.
There might be a hole because of, yeah, see, this is kind of weird looking here. See? You take these edges, hold in control, right click to vertices, mesh, merge to center. See, that got rid of that one. Now let's look at the other one. Yep, same problem. Right click, control, vertices, merge to center. Guys, because I'm in 3, remember, if I need to have, yeah, I'm going to actually double click this curve, hold control and delete to get rid of it, double click this one, and bevel that one, very minimal, so I get a sharp corner to it. I want a sharp corner there. Watch this. I'm going to get a little more fancy here. Bevel, tiny, tiny bevel. Vertex, right click, to faces, extrude, stop W, just get a little bit more crazy looking detail there. So I accidentally hit something over here. See, like I said, sometimes be aware that you might be selecting something on the other side of your geometry. See that? I didn't mean to select that, but I did.
If we don't finish this today, will we be working?
I guess we could, sure. Like I said, I'll get this video ripped out. Like I said, because we're running out of time. But this video will be made available. I may not get a chance to convert it till tomorrow afternoon because I got class in the morning at the campus. But here is just one last thing I'm going to show you here, just to kind of say, I want to kind of get to some level of completion. Not to mention, I want to eventually talk about next week even is creating tripods. All right, so the last thing I've got with this model is this slice that goes right through it, right? Because it's two pieces with this bolt that kind of goes in like that. Now, as it stands right now, I could move this edge over, right? And that edge over to kind of secure that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to do this with a cut tool. Okay, so watch. Okay, so I have this selected, right? I'm going to insert an edge loop right here. Okay. I'm going to insert an edge loop right there. So I've got an inner and an outer. Actually, let me go ahead and do one right here too. I'm then going to come back to my tools here. So I was insert edge loop, make a hole. That one. Multi-cut, I meant. And just cut across like that. Now be aware, I have to mimic that on the other side as well. I'm going to want to delete the half and then remirror it. Make sense? So let me see which is going to be the easiest way to go about this. My guess is we go ahead and select what I don't want here, right? Display, hide, selection. My guess is it's probably best to put the face on, take half this mess, right? So, and get rid of it. Because what I need to do now, okay? And I could have even, now that I look at this, let me go back to my side view. I could actually put one more slice down here now that I'm looking at that. Again, another multi-cut. Let me just put one here. So that on the face side, I'm now just going to remove. Try to remember, is that correct? Yes. But be aware, I also have to take into account the perspective, the other side of it. So I'm just slicing one geometry into two. Now, I can also now face double click, and if I need, I can separate that. So now it is two pieces. Let's do a modify center pivot. Modify center pivot. Okay. And if I need to, of course, I can display hide selection. So you can see now what it's going to take to seal this up. Well, look at the shortcut keys, okay, or the shortcuts of this. Okay, so I have this one edge, right? If I need to, I have to extrude it, shift to extrude it until it hits that center axis. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, bridge. Here again, I can do the same thing with these three, right? Shift myself a little sharp corner edge there. Shift again to take it all the way to the symmetry line. There. But be aware, this needs to be welded. Now, that can be easily welded with a target weld, okay? We're not really getting too fancy there, see that? Here again. This guy, shift to extrude it a little. To be a bridge. Shift to extrude it till it hits the center axis, but be wary because, again, this vertex here, that needs to be merged, right? This one here, make sure that is merged. If you don't know, hit 3 on the keyboard and you'll start to see where your errors are. See, this right here is my error. That all looks fine. There's something going on here that is not merging. My guess is it that? Merge. G, G, G. I can just go through here and just quickly merge these if needed. Or if it's completely failing on my end, which it still looks like it is, without worry, remove it, right? And rebridge it. I'm trying to figure out where that might be giving me the problem. Now I know this needs to be doubled up edge if I want that sharp. So go ahead now and just give it a bevel. Ah, see, there's my error. See, I did the bevel and it did not work. Bevel, see? Bevel's in the details. That's where it wasn't welding. That should be right there. Merge. See? Now it's clean, but now I know, yeah, that needs to be beveled. Very small, controlled bevel. Thing like that, so when I hit 3, it holds that shape. Done here. See, things aren't getting welded here. Take that. Merge. I think it was this one here. Merged. Much better looking. See that? Take that edge. And bevel. Hit the 3. And you see now it is holding its shape. Display. Show. Last hidden. Okay. I can go ahead and display my selection. Get this guy now sealed up. So you can see, I'm gonna do this real quick now because I'm running out of time. 2, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. Shift, drag down. Shift, drag down. One, 2, 3, 4. Oops. Bridge. So far, so good. This one here, though, these vertices need to be merged. Hit 3 on the keyboard. This one here needs to be merged. See that? Yeah, it looks good and clean now. But again, that needs to hold its corner. That needs to hold its corner. And this needs to hold it. And, whoops, that's another mistake. Let's go here with a little bevel. This guy here, now that's not merged. Merge, edge, bevel. Oops. What's wrong with you? Oh. Merge. Oh, these merged. There we go. See, the bottom one was merged. And now. We see that complex piece. What I gotta do is display, show all. See how it all fits together tooth and nail like that. Hide my reference. Oops. One last thing. This guy, let's go ahead and combine them again. Right, combine. Where's my gizmo at? It's kind of in the middle, so I'm going to need to mirror, but then, oh, no, that actually did pretty well there in the mirror. It's pretty good. Let's delete by type history to clear out all the history. And there is the headphone. I even filled in that little gap there. That and then sliced it out, removed it, and then just filled in the gap by anchoring in any corner. That kind of holds that sharp edge, especially when it's smooth. So all this is smooth now, yeah. So I mean, if I want to, I could go to 1. I could even come here and just, combine them all. Have it available of a 1. So remember, we could do this and say, hey, display. Poly count. Okay, well, let's see. This is 2,036 faces. With a smoother on it, or a high poly version. This one is 32,584 subdivisions. Especially if I turn off my wireframes. Wireframe and shade. Then you can see the difference between the two.